It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we cover the very latest in property news. We do that 7 days a week, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. And the middle of our working week. Hope it's going well, whatever you are up to today, 29th of May. And to see that CoreLogic data is telling us that a record 16% of early 2023 sales involved properties sold within 3 years of their last purchase. Now, while that this can indicate a hot property market with investors flipping houses for profit, the current rate of quick resales suggests another factor, and that is mortgage hardship. And Eliza Owen says that this points to a combination of mortgage stress and capital gain windfalls driving these sales. And supporting this, you might have caught up on ASIC's recent report, which highlights a 54% surge in mortgage hardship. That is since late 2023 compared to 2022, with over 116,000 home loans which were affected. And that's not a small number. And the wait continues, of course, for the interest rates to head in the opposite direction. Well, let's catch up right now this morning with Matthew Hughes, the founder and managing director of Capital Property Advisory there in one of the hottest Australian property markets, and that is Perth. You are very busy with the media commentating there in WA, although maybe a little less excited about a recent article that you were being associated with. What was all that about?
Yeah, actually, before I get into that, Craig, if you don't mind, I just want to do a quick shout out to my brother Blaine, who's celebrating his 48th birthday today, who listens to my podcast every few weeks. So happy birthday, Blaine.
There you go. We always seem to play that with you.
He'll appreciate that. But yeah, the article that I'm talking about wasn't featuring me at all, but it was one that we had some involvement in terms of having attended the home open at a house in Mullaloo, which is a coastal suburb here in WA in the Northern Coastal Corridor. I'd just been to the home open and it was pretty busy when I was there, but I was in and out in about 15 minutes, so I didn't probably quite realise the gravity of it. But the article said there was 500 people through 2 home opens on the weekend, and there was 25 offers before the weekend was over. Part of the issue was the agent had priced it from $999, which was a pretty low price. I don't want to call it paid advertising, but you can make your own decision when you hear what it probably sold for. We put in an offer that we thought was pretty aggressive, cash offer with minimal conditions, and we missed out. And so I'm anticipating that even though it was advertised at from $999, it must have gone in the mid-1.3s, maybe higher.
Yes, so quite a spread there on the property price range. Now, we do talk a lot about just how hot the Perth property market is, and there is plenty of praise about that. But some commentators are suggesting that the start of a slowdown is on. Now, question for you this morning, are you seeing that slowdown in any way?
Look, if we're talking about the rental side, we've seen a bit more stock come to market. So on that side, we have seen less people at home opens. The rate of rental growth is slowing. And I think that's more likely to hit an affordability ceiling before the sales side. On the sales side, I think it's still trending in the opposite direction. We're seeing stock levels continue to drop. We're down at just over 3,400 properties on the market now, and transaction levels last week were nearly 1,000. And then we read a report from a far more reputable source than the last one we discussed from Oxford Economics recently. And their forecasts were a lot more in line with our expectations on what we think is going to transpire in Perth in the coming years. And it did predict that rental growth will begin to slow, which we're seeing already. The forecast of the property price growth, on the other hand, was quite astounding.
Yes, and just sticking with Oxford, because you've got more information about the Perth forecast that they have done, and it is stating what Perth is likely to achieve in coming years.
It is. And look, they've projected some growth around other capital cities as well, but specifically around Perth, they're talking about it continuing to being the standout capital for price growth all the way through to 2027. And at the same time, they're suggesting that Sydney may have reached peak unaffordability, while Perth is still one of the most affordable capitals despite the recent growth in the country. So their data showed that in Sydney, it would require an amazing 56% of gross household median income to service a typical 30-year mortgage. And that's compared with Perth at the moment only requiring 34% and the national average sitting at 46%. So despite the growth that we've had, we've come off such a low base that we're still very, very affordable. And even with the projected growth from Oxford, they're still suggesting that we're going to be one of the most affordable capitals even in 2027.
All right, so that is Matthew there in Perth talking about the local property market, and we'll talk more from the Oxford prediction next.
Let's explore together the power of real estate. We keep you better informed and updated.
And right now it is time for another property tip. We are going into Hobart again, catching up with David Lithgow there in Hobart. Good morning to you, David. What have you got for us this morning?
Thanks for having us, Craig. Look, I just want to talk about the opportunity here in Tasmania and some of the properties in the northern suburbs. They're all big, normal blocks, 700 square metre blocks, plenty of land, but those types of property on a broad spectrum have come down about 20% over the last 12 to 18 months. I feel there is so much opportunity out there for a quick rehash of paint and some new floor coverings. There's some real bargains out there, no question about that. The investors will see this happen the next 6 months. It's there waiting. And as always, when the property market comes back a bit, it's always the outer suburbs that feel the pinch initially. I like what I see.
Ready to step up your property knowledge? Access powerful insights with us.
And welcome back. It is a Real Estate Wednesday, and we are talking to Matthew there in Perth. And Matthew, I just want to stay with the Oxford prediction for a little longer, which will be of interest to our first home buyers especially, and also those investors from different states that are buying in the Perth property market, because Oxford have made some comments around affordability, and I guess this is for the future of Perth.
Yeah, it is. Look, in terms of the growth that they've projected, there was a comment there from Marie Kilroy from Oxford State, and she was quoted as saying that the Perth boom seems firmly entrenched. And they talk about the bright economic future, and they talk about more capital expenditure in the resources industry in the coming years. So contrary to the rest of the country, our economy is trending in a more positive direction. And then in terms of their projections specifically on what we're going to do in the next few years, they're expecting nearly 13% growth in the balance of this calendar year. And then they're suggesting that 9% per annum in the following 3 years is what we can expect to see, which would push our median dwelling price just up over the $1 million mark, which is still well below where Sydney sits currently. And given we've got such high incomes in comparison to the rest of the country, we're often sitting in the second or third spot, often behind Sydney. We're still projected at that point in 2027 to be one of the most affordable capitals, even with a median price of $1 million.
Well, so long as there is affordability, that is the key thing. But let's just turn our attention to one of these questions that we've been talking about for, probably for the last year and a half, and that is new homes, because people still want to build a new home, buy a new home, and it looks like they're only going to get worse as time goes on. How do you read that?
Yeah, obviously with prices going up and stock levels remaining low, and demand doesn't seem to be abating, so competition's going to remain quite fierce for some time. And as we discussed a while ago, we're starting to see some parity between even though we've got high construction costs, there's a bit of parity now across most areas between the cost to buy established and the cost to build new. So we are starting to see some green shoots on the construction side, and there are some good leading indicators there in terms of vacant land sales and new dwelling commencements finally starting to improve. But they're coming off very low levels, and then we're going to run into some issues once we do see the appetite improve with the labour workforce and timeframes potentially blowing out again.
And so in terms of if there is more construction activity, won't that new supply help with the supply constraint issues that Perth has been facing for just such a long period of time?
You would think so, and I think it will in the short term. Obviously, any new supply is going to be welcome in Perth, but the issue that we're now facing is that as the demand shifts to land prices have started surging at higher rates, and developers of land estates in greenfield areas can't get land to market fast enough to meet new supply. So whilst we're going to have a little bit of an uptick in new supply starts, we're going to run into this same issue where we have severe lack of established properties, which we have now, and then looking down the barrel of a severe lack of land to actually build on, which is going to push prices further. So what we've seen recently is the demand for vacant land has increased. Stock levels have dropped 34% in the last quarter alone on land, and they're down 70% from this time last year. So whilst it sounds encouraging, it's going to land in the same space as where the established market is, which is chronically undersupplied and upward pressure on prices.
So plenty of talking points there always is with Perth. And I know that next time that we're going to be talking, you're not going to be in Perth because you're going to be in holiday mode.
I'm about 3 or 4 days away from jumping on a plane to Europe with the family, and we've got whole month of June over in Europe and a little bit of time in Dubai as well on the way home. So yeah, really looking forward to that. But I've penciled in to catch up with you on the 20th, which is actually my birthday. So we'll catch up then, and we're going to talk about the recent changes to the rental legislation here in WA.
All right, well, travel safely. And once again, thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Podcast. Make sure that seatbelt is on at all times too when you're flying.
I've already shared that article with the whole family because we've got some other family coming as well. So absolutely, we'll be doing that.
Gain insights with exclusive conversations from real estate professionals about buying, selling and investing across Australia.
But they are, in a sense, cookie-cutter solutions. When I talk about factory-built housing, I'm talking about architects who know what a factory can do, and they can design each and every single wall, so to speak, to their specific specifications, and then the house just gets Legoed together on site. If you look at your own house, it is something like 20 different walls and 3-4 different roofing elements. That's about it.
I like your thinking, Simon. You've got all the first-home buyers really excited, saying, why are we not living in the future? This sounds great.
I do think that housing is such a big unsolved issue in this country, and the sheer fact that there is a morning property podcast that talks about this on a very regular basis means it is an issue that needs solving.
I think maybe if we change just a little bit the way that we think about housing, so if we maybe think of a house or a property, whether it's an investment or whether it's someone owning their own home, as first a home for someone and second as an investment.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.